Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. I'm very excited to have Dan LeFave with us. Dan received life's second chance after surviving a tragic accident that took 3 lives. He struggled through head trauma, marathons, business failures, and battles with fear and doubt so he could inspire people with his wisdom. Entrepreneurs hire him to establish self-managing business systems and automations to slow down time. Dan, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Stephan. It's great to be here.
Let's first of all cover your origin story. You had a tragic accident that was life-defining for you, and if we could maybe go through what that event was and what gifts and epiphanies came out of it, as well as other life implications, that would be a great start to this interview.
Certainly. Well, it was an incident in my life that I think, as I look back, it was very significant, and I'll share that in a moment. But the thing was, that accident, was totally surprised, and this was at a time when seatbelts were optional. So I didn't have a seatbelt on, and I flew. We were hit head on, and a severe car accident. The driver of the car that hit us perished immediately, and we were in a car with another young guy. His name was Cameron, and we were going to a hockey tournament. And anyway, his parents both died too. So unfortunately, 3 people, instantly dead. And for me, I was in a coma, and I landed in a coma, and I was in that state for a few days. So for 3-4 days, I was in this coma, and ultimately, it was an awakening. And even at a young age, I was 7 years old, and so, but it was quite an awakening because I started looking at the world really differently, and even assessing death and the fear of death, because I would watch for my father coming home from he had a business, and I would see when he was coming home, and I would stare out the window instead of watching something or playing something. And but ultimately, the key here is that it actually erased some of my memory. So from 7 down, I have it's really gray. I have nothing to reference it against, though, because I don't know. I've never been a 7-year-old before, so So, but the thing is, as I look back, I realize, it really washed a lot of things away, a lot of memories and experiences, and I think it gave me a fresh start.
Interesting. So if you could get your memories back from prior to 7, would you opt for that?
Actually, no. And the reason being is because my understanding is that from birth till 7 or 8 years old, we're not reasoning, and we don't have the ability to say no. And everything that is said to us or done to us or that we experience is real and true, and it becomes our behaviors and our beliefs and so on. And I think it's actually become a benefit for me because I'm totally unlike my entire family and even my relatives. And I have enough relatives. I have 60 to 70 cousins because there was 13 brothers and sisters in my mom's family and 9 in my dad's. And so, but I'm, not by choice. I'm totally a black sheep. I don't fit in. And I think the benefit is that I had this shaking up, this awakening, and it's caused me to think differently and look at things differently, the world, and not just accept things.
Right. And so what would be an example of something that maybe recently happened, an opportunity or a challenge that was heavily shaped by your experience, like something that maybe wouldn't have gone as well, but it did because you had this life experience from age 7?
Well, I think that, I'm a father. I have 3 children. And so I think because of that jolt, it caused me to question myself and question my strengths and my abilities and even consciousness, how aware I am about things. So I think as a parent, it's caused me to think differently and challenge myself with situations instead of just, saying, well, I'm a reflection of my parents, so this is the way it's going to be, or the way I will act, and or saying to my kids, well, hey, I learned that from my dad, so you're just going to have to suffer through it as well. Instead of doing that, I actually will make commitments, or I'll make a pact with them about how I'm going to behave, which is unlike my parents. So I may change generations as a result of that, and I don't know, but at least I'm planting the seed. I don't know if it's directly correlated, but it seems like it is, because again, I just started questioning things around me, the world, even nature. Actually, this is I think maybe a more poignant example. But when I walk in nature, I don't just walk in nature and say, "Oh, nice blue jay, nice squirrel." I look at the nature of them, and I ask myself, well, what's that about? How am I associated with that, or why am I seeing that now? Like, if I walked by 5 minutes later, would I see the same thing or have the same experience? So I look at nature as a reflection of what I'm thinking and doing in life, and I get feedback from it. So again, I think it's because of my greater awareness.
Yeah. I have a view of this beautiful enchanted lake. That's the name of it. Right outside in the backyard. We're on the lake. And I'll sit out there doing Zoom calls, and I'll see fish jump 3 feet up in the air at a certain poignant moment where I'm saying something true or something important, something really valuable or something vulnerable, and it just seems to be orchestrated, for lack of a better word. I just see these things happen in a very kind of synchronized swimming sort of way. It's really cool. It's really amazing. So there's a much bigger picture than we can really wrap our minds around. So I really appreciate that.
And I think, like you're saying, I think it helps you, like this helped me become more objective. So think broader instead of just, being so narrow, because most people are in the weeds and they have, life happening to them. And the world is whirling around them, and they don't zoom out to say, well, wait just a moment. If I carry on this way, doing these things, behaving this way, and thinking this way, another 3 years like this, what would that look like? And then if it pisses you off, then great, get irritated and agitated and then do something about it. But if we don't take that time to be objective and zoom out, like even in nature, that's a zoom out, I think, because now you're no longer thinking about yourself and getting caught up in the whirlwind of delusion and solutions you're trying to solve. It gives you that little bit of separation that you need to get grounded.
Yes, I love being out in nature, going in forests. I love touching the trees and connecting with their souls, because trees have souls. I didn't know that until this year. But from the Jewish holiday Tu B'Shvat, where the trees are celebrated and appreciated on that holiday, my sister-in-law, who studies Kabbalah, was telling me how trees have souls, and it makes sense. It seems so obvious to me now in retrospect, but it's so strange to me that some people use the term tree hugger in a derogatory way, as if you're a nutcase, or you're just soft if you want to hug trees. That's a pretty upside down way of looking at the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's, I think it was Judi Dench. She's an actor, and she did a documentary where she walked around her property, and she had people come in and teach her how these trees communicate, especially when insects are attacking them. They'll eject a mist and things like that, and so they're like a whole community. There's some that attack, connect by roots underground as well, and so
right, like
we don't question it. Yeah, exactly. So there's, yes, I totally agree with that. I watched that documentary and I was blown away by how there's all this communication going on, even if God knows if it's being deforested, what the kind of communication is going on then when trees are like, hey, we're all being chopped down here. What the response is like, but I agree. I think we're all organic and we're all connected somehow.
Yeah. I'll include a link in the show notes to that Judi Dench documentary. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. So, it was amazing. So.
Oh, awesome. Okay, so let's talk about how your business came to be and how the accident and the different after effects of that accident played a role in the business that you have and the people that you serve and how you serve them. You have a pretty cool cutting edge consultancy coaching practice, and I'm all about systemizing and automating. So I'm sure our listener who's probably interested in the same thing, otherwise they wouldn't be listening to Get Yourself Optimized. So how does all that interplay?
Well, certainly, to the question you asked about how did I get into it, it wasn't a direct path. It wasn't like a lightning bolt or something like that. It wasn't intuitive, but there was some intuition in it. But I was basically going down the path of working in corporate, and the earlier start, though, or when I started earlier, I started building a business with my brother in the 90s, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I helped him systematize things. It was a blessing. I sprained my thumb within the first 2 weeks of working with him, and we were a construction telecom business. So I was meant to be in the field, but I ended up in the office, and I ended up managing the finances and the business and setting up systems and so on. And we built that business to 7 figures in a few years. But then I wasn't going to get part ownership, so I started looking elsewhere, and I ended up getting a project management position, which I wasn't even qualified for, but there was a $25 million project, a lot of responsibility, and I managed that. And then I did real estate in telecom as well, real estate negotiations in telecom. Never knew how to do that. Didn't know how to read real estate agreements, and so I kept going down this path, and I was being redirected at different times, and sometimes the door closed, and then another one opened or a window opened, and so that's how it happened. Like I did project management for 2 years, did real estate negotiations for 2 years, and then went over to the largest landlord in Canada, and I did real estate negotiations for them. And I ended up staying there for 7 years, and I became a senior manager. And again, I don't know if I had the qualifications. I studied geography at university, so I didn't really have any skill or knowledge that I could bring to the table. But I'm very resourceful, and I can solve problem. I'm a solution finder by nature. So anyway, but then I had a moment where I could take a pause, and it was when my second son was being born. And because this was a quasi-government organization, they would pay me almost 100% of my pay, and like 94% or something. And I just said, okay, well, this is a gift. So I said yes to 36 weeks off. Or sorry, 36 weeks. Yeah, 36 weeks, almost a year. I just said, yes, I'll take that time off. And my first son, I never even knew about it. I was so narrow-minded that I just worked the whole time. But in this case, I took it. But then that was where I had the awakening, and I realized, what am I going back to? 3-hour commute, all this work, demands, and so on, and nothing really inspirational. It was becoming kind of mundane. And anyway, I did some soul searching, and I asked a friend of mine who's a therapist, and she says, well, what do you want? And I said, well, I definitely want to be with my family as much as possible, and I want to do something that inspires me. And she said, well, pray for it. I said, okay, I can do that. So I did, and I got a call the next day from this guy, Ken Graham. And his son is Jamie, and Jamie and I were friends in high school. And Ken was operating a business. It was multi-level marketing, but it wasn't. It's not my area of focus. And I attempted to build this business with him before, but in the end, I ended up. I said yes. I was on the phone, and I remember thinking, Ken, like you sent me Ken, of all people. And anyway, I ended up saying yes, and 6 months of kind of dragging myself through the mud trying to build that business led me to meeting Dave Blanchard. And Dave is the CEO of Augmendino. Do you know Augmendino's work?
Mm-hmm, I do.
Yeah, so Augmendino, the world's greatest salesman. So anyway, I ended up buying Dave's books. He said, buy 10 of my books, get 8 weeks of coaching. And I figured at that time I needed some support, so I did it. And then I found out where he lived, and I was flying to Salt Lake City for an event. And I found out that Dave lives right around in a bedroom city of Salt Lake City. So I messaged him, and he invited me to his house. And, I just said yes, but I said, there's a slight problem. I have a friend flying from Minnesota, and he said, bring him over. You don't know us. Yeah, well, these are the kinds of things that, they're invitations, but you're just like thinking, you don't know me. You don't know, the guy I'm bringing, Steve, but you've invited us. So anyway, treated us really well. We sat in his movie room, watched a movie, The Peaceful Warrior, if you know that movie.
Oh, great movie.
Yeah,
just saw it recently.
Inspirational movie. Yeah, there you go. So exactly. So anyway, but at the end of the evening, and because I'm very, like, I think maybe because of the accident as well, I'm very bold. I'll ask anybody anything. So I just said, hey, show me where you work. I saw your videos. I want to see your environment, your office. And so he did. And then, at the end of the conversation, he said, Dan, I think you'd make a great coach. And, two things. He could have been promoting me, promoting his service to me, meaning I could be a coach for him because he has that kind of business, or he could have just been saying it out of, his intuitive guidance. So anyway, I came back home. I ended up connecting with a friend, told her this story, and she said, well, I'm studying Bob Proctor's stuff, Bob Proctor from The Secret and so on. So yeah. I said, okay, let me have a look at that. So I bought all of his programs and started studying, consuming, and gaining knowledge. And then next thing she said to me when we spoke again, she said, why don't you talk to his team about coaching? I said, all right, no harm in that. So I did. And I remember that call very clearly because within 20 minutes, the gentleman said, let's get Bob on the phone. And I was like, well, I don't know. Okay, who's Bob? I don't know who he is. I never heard of him, right? And then anyway, within a couple hours, they had Bob on the phone, and he was talking about coaching and the impact and all that. And he was selling me on his service because he has a coaching program that you can get certified for and teach, which I get. So in the end, no income. My wife's off with a new baby, and I'm good at saving money. So I had money. So I just said, okay. So I ended up investing, about $20,000 between his programs and his coaching certification. And I just stepped forward. And from that point on, I just kept saying yes. And I co-authored a book with Jack Canfield and Deepak Chopra and Dennis Waitley. And that was, again, saying yes. I found myself just saying yes to almost anything as long as, it wasn't going to, cause a lot of harm or we couldn't afford it or something like that. And as a result, I've written my own book and I'm building, a business where I can impact thousands of people. And it's different, though. It's different from other coaching. It's not just, here's the steps and here's the system and you just follow this. People don't realize that when they're making changes to their life and their business, they're changing their identity. They're really changing a core part of themselves. And that's the kind of work that I focus on.
Gotcha. And this book, your book, Living the Life of Your Dreams, what's the main outcome for our listener beyond the obvious title? Like what makes this book special or different from most of the self-help books out there?
Well, it's a reverse engineering of your life for one. So it's basically death backwards. So if my perspective is, if you're living a life worth remembering and also living with a life worth dying for, which this book deals with that, it helps you deal with both. Looking forward and also looking back. So, from death backwards, you ask yourself, how do I want to be remembered? How do I want my family, my friends, my colleagues, my community, the most important people in my life to remember me? Basically, what am I leaving behind as my legacy? So that's part of it. But then also, I have what I've established as the Fave 5, which is faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances, in that order. So, I'm challenging people to live with faith and then family, friends, fitness, and finances. Put finances at the end, not make money their God or let it control them. And it's a challenge, a big challenge, because most people do things for the sake of money. And that's the premise of the book. So it's reverse engineering your life, and it ties, like, it's like a perfect puzzle piece for what I do, because I'm getting them to think broadly, the end, and then work backwards, reverse, because you can connect the dots looking backwards. So reverse engineer that and create a life that, if life were to end, what would that look like? And what kinds of things would be passed on or left behind, if you could leave something behind, and then design your life now to achieve that. So again, it's about looking forward and then knowing that if you were to get to the end, what would that looking backwards? Because the number one regret for people in hospice is that they did not do the things that they wanted to do, or they didn't take enough risk, so.
Yeah. Looking backwards is that's a profound way of looking at life, because it's not about what happened in your past. It's what's happening in the now, right? So you're here with who you are right now, is shaped by your decisions and your attention and your intention, and all the past experiences. It's just input. It's just feedback, data, and it's in the past. So if you have a near-death experience, then my understanding is the life review that you may experience from that, for many at least, starts from death working backwards. So the flashes of significant life events and how you made people feel and what you did, positive and negative, starts at the tail end of your life and then works backwards and through the life review towards the beginning to your birth. Mm-hmm. So did you have a life review kind of experience when you were in your coma, or when you were in the accident, maybe bleeding or what have you, and it looked like you might not make it or something like that? Is that something that you experienced?
No, none of that. In fact, I don't remember the accident. I don't remember much of what happened leading up to it, even. Like, I couldn't recall anything, like going to meet them, getting in their car and the drive, or anything, nothing at all. It was just bang, memory. The doctor said I lost 40,000 brain cells. I'm not exactly sure how they could estimate that, but, so it could be plus or minus. But the fact is, memories were lost. So, and I know that because if I look back, I can remember little glimpses of experiences, but not anything really concrete. So, so I didn't have that kind of experience. And when I came out, I'm not even really clear about what happened there. I only remember, being in the hospital and seeing some young girl there that was having a birthday. And I said to my parents, can we buy her a chocolate bar or something? That's, but then going home, I was basically at home for 2 weeks and then thrown right back into life, like right back to school. This is a time when, it just, things were not assessed as carefully as they are now, which is, hey, there was a lot of trauma there. We should probably help this child. And so I was just kind of left to my own devices and to figure things out. And so I had to, work through that. And, I have scars. Like, you probably can't see them that well, but, I had a lot of, stitches and so on. But I didn't have that, that reflection on life, but I have been reflecting little by little as I've been going through life. And I think the fact that this book, I think this book was born out of all of my experiences, because now I'm saying to folks, look at your life really broadly and look back and think how, if you could end it and it could be ideal, what would that look like? Because that will then tell them, who do I need to become? What is my future self? What is my identity? What do I want to identify with? And then it helps you get clear on your values and your principles and what you'll stand for and what you won't. And then when you have that, at least, then when you go through life, it's not questionable. If somebody invites you to do something or be part of something and it goes against your values and what's going to get you to that end result, you just say no, even if it seems like it's going to cost you or might not be so valuable at the moment.
Yeah. So how did you figure out what your values are? I know you've got your Fave 5, faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances, but those aren't core values. Those are areas of focus. And so what do you value most, and how did you figure that out?
Well, again, I do a lot of self-analysis. I journal a lot. So I write down what I'm thinking and what's going on, and I look for evidence. So that's the approach that I take. At one point, though, I went through a program where it was helping me assess my values, and it was giving me some samples. And so I used that as my starting point. It wasn't, necessarily the be all and end all, but it gave me a place to begin. And but also at the same time, I'm looking at, let's say I'm a father, so I have an identity as a father. What do I value as a father? What do I want to experience as a result of being a father, and what do I want reflected back to me? If it's not something that I anticipated, well, then I better go back to work, go back to the workshop and work on myself and my inner knowledge and experience and values. And but the thing is, I'm an athlete, so that's one of my identities. I'm a father, so these are the things that I identify with really easily. I don't have to think too heavily, and then I start determining what really matters to me about those things, and then I start forming values around them, and as as you keep building, you end up having almost like a foundation for who you are. And, people can't take that away. You own that. So, that's the approach that I took. But I think the key was, somebody nudged me. I was doing some work, Jeff Walker, from Product Launch Formula, if you know who he is, he had an exercise about values. So I ended up, watching that several times and making notes and taking whiteboards and writing all sorts of notes until I started winding things down and get it to where I'm clear and what I want.
That's awesome. And did you formulate any affirmations? Like, I'll give you an example. So one of my values is around integrity and doing what I say I'm going to do. So I made an affirmation out of that. I am a man who does what he says he's going to do. And I kept saying that every morning for a period of months and made that part of my identity. I internalized that to the point where I didn't have to use it anymore. It's just that's how I show up. Now, my wife would beg to differ that I sometimes don't do that, but I'm a very different man than I was, let's say, 5 years ago prior to doing those affirmations. So I'm curious, where do affirmations fit into this formula, and do you have an example or two you could share?
Sure. Well, I'm definitely a fan of affirmations. So I'll start by sharing the experience that I developed with my family when my first son, who just turned 14 yesterday, we've been doing since he was 3. So we say affirmations every single day. Now, I realize this isn't one about me and my family or the things that I want, but we developed, and what I've done is I've chosen affirmations that matter to me. So, and some of them are very simple. It might be, I love myself. I like myself. I accept myself. I'm lovable. I'm knowledgeable. I'm irresistible, impeccable. Just little statements like that. Or it could be longer ones. I'm influenced only by positive thoughts and positive people. I'm alive to the joys of living. I'm living my life by choice and creating my future. I mean, these are things we've said thousands of times because it's been, 11 years now. So
that's amazing.
But and it's part of our routine now. So at bedtime, if I'm doing something else or not around them, we're ready. They'll come and say, we're ready for gratitudes and affirmations. And we do things we talk about what we're grateful for, and then we will affirm. And then that said, I am a big fan of affirmations. So I have a plethora of affirmations, and some of them I've said thousands of times. Let's say as an example for business, one might be, and I like rhymes and alliteration. So my life, my business are continually being optimized, organized, and systematized. And, I just got caught up in my own affirmation. So my life and my business are continually being optimized, organized, systematized, and the tasks outside my purpose, I might be messing it up. The tasks outside my purpose and expertise are being delegated. I'm missing something in there, but anyway, just a number of different affirmations that can set me in the right direction. And it's about dominant thoughts. We know that Napoleon Hill taught about that, right? So I've studied his books and his teachings, but definitely affirmations. I have some for business, some for family, personal. My key though is, and I teach this to folks who are open to doing affirmations, is do them in odd moments. And people say, well, what's that? And I say, well, you go to the bathroom? Yeah, several times a day. Great. Have them on the mirror in their bathroom and just say them, and say them long enough and enough times that they become normal. And then that becomes, like you did, it became part of who you are, right? Then those words stick and it becomes part of your identity. And anyway, maybe I can think of another one. That's about business.
While you're thinking of another one, I'll share another one of mine. I'm intentional in everything I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a good one. And intent matters so much. That's the direction you're going in, right? Yeah. So I have one that's I surround myself with people who ask more of me than I ask of myself. Mm. So, I want people to push me, challenge me, test me, see if, I can take the heat. Yeah. So, well,
if you're the smartest person in the room or the most motivated, you're in the wrong room.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to gain from or benefit from that? How are you going to grow? So, and I think that, now we're talking about the accident and so on, that accident, you can say that it was like being put in a pressure cooker. It was heat, right? It was an incident. It was a shock. It was a jolt. It was a change of perspective. And so that's how I'm able to go through life, and I can take the heat. Like, I'm actually calmer in a stressful situation, like somebody else's stressful situation. I've seen car accidents, one outside of a hockey arena one time, and I went over and I helped this woman. I could see her arm was broken and everything. She's in shock, and I'm calm. I'm like, I'd be like a paramedic, but I'm not. But I'm calm, and I helped her through the situation until people arrived and, the EMS. I think those are the kinds of things that came out of it. I can get objective and handle things differently. But yeah, to your point about affirmations, they are, they're amazing. Actually, here's something that might be valuable, and you could share this as well. There's an app that I use for writing affirmations, and I write them every single morning, and it's been 2 years now. And it's called Prompter, like a teleprompter, but it's just Prompter, PROMPTER.ca. And it's an app for writing affirmations, and you get you get a handful of new affirmations every 21 days, and you write every single day, take a picture to prove you did it, submit it. And so, anyway, I'm
That's
a huge
cool.
fan of affirmations.
Yeah. And you mentioned gratitudes as being part of your process as well. So are you journaling those? Are you saying those out loud to your son, and your son saying them back to you? Or what's your process for the gratitudes part?
With our family, we do them live and out loud. So we just have a pattern. I start off with my eldest son, and they pass it on to each other, so we don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting. He finishes, and then he says to his younger brother, "You go," and then younger brother, "You go," and then my wife goes, and then I go. And so we share what we're grateful for in the day. And then to your question about journaling, fortunately, Bob Proctor is a big fan of gratitude, so he gave me a gratitude journal, which I've been replenishing with new notepads, every few months. So I've been writing gratitudes for years and years. So I write a page of gratitudes every single morning. And, and I also, picked up something Deepak Chopra talks about, 3 questions you can ask yourself every day. And one of them is, what am I grateful for? So as I'm doing that walk in nature, I actually go into a little forest by a pond, and it's the garden of gratitude. And that's where I can, I just say what I'm grateful for. It's early in the morning. There's nobody out there, so I can just speak out loud. But, here's the thing. If you think about it, if what goes out comes back, if I'm grateful for things, I'm happy about things, I'm satisfied, I'm sending out this resonance, this energy and I'm sending out this force that says, hey, universe, infinite intelligence, God, I like this. Right? And then, it'll be mirrored back to me. So that's the approach I take, instead of trying to criticize and condemn and judge things.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And what are Deepak's other 2 questions besides what are you grateful for?
Yeah. The first one is, who am I? Second one is, what do I want? And then, what am I grateful for? So as I walk in the morning, those are the questions I ask, and I ask them and then give some time and space for the responses, the intuitive responses to come. And then I go into the next ones. But those are the 3 primary questions.
I like it. And what about being grateful for the challenges? This is something that wasn't intuitive to me, or wasn't obvious, I guess, to me initially. But when I got this feedback from my sister-in-law, the same one who told me about the trees having souls, she said that I need to be grateful for the things I don't want. And to delineate those out in your gratitude journal will help you to crystallize the lessons from each of those challenges. And so then, the challenges you receive, the problems that you receive will be higher quality as you have better receptivity, more sensitive receptivity to the lessons from each of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, the one thing you just reminded me of is I listened to this meditation by Wayne Dyer, and one of the affirmations in it, he says, no matter how much I protest, I'm totally responsible for everything in my life. So that's the approach that I take, not just because he said it, but because I like that, and I do want to be responsible for everything. So then I see things that are reflected back to me as a response. So I developed a practice of bookending my day. So I set intentions at the end of my day, and then I review them the following next day, like in the next evening, and then I set new intentions. So I'm looking for evidence of what transpired that day, what went on, and it doesn't matter whether I think it's good or bad. It's the evidence. Mm-hmm. And so if it's a challenge that came through, I'm like, okay, well, how did I handle that? Did I get emotional? Did I get triggered? Did I react? Because responding is way different from reacting. So then, that's where the learning comes in, but I have to do it at that moment, because I might have gotten triggered and reacted during the day. But then if I look for the evidence at the end of the day and I realize, oh, now that I'm calm, I actually realize I reacted, and I prefer to respond. So how would I handle that differently? So I can do what Neville Goddard talks about, which is revision. You can revise the experience. And so that's the approach I take. And so I'm basically looking for evidence. I actually call them opportunities for appreciation, or OFAs. And so I'm just looking for opportunities for appreciation, and it doesn't matter what they are. It doesn't matter what my perception is. It's whatever showed up that day. And if it's something that jolted or got me going and triggered me, then that's an indication. Still some work to do. Gotta dig in.
Yeah. Well, this discussion reminds me of earlier in our conversation. You got this wonderful gift of 36 weeks off at 94% salary. And what occurred to me is that wasn't a gift from that governmental entity. It was a gift from God delivered through that governmental entity that was employing you. And when you voice your appreciation for these things and you connect the dots, that everything you receive is from God through others, that they're just the delivery agents, then it's, I don't know, it takes things to another level, I think. Curious what your thoughts are on that.
I tend to agree. I've been studying a book lately called The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. You know that book? Yeah. So
it's on my reading list. I haven't read it yet, but
okay.
Yeah.
It's great. And it ties into what we're talking about here, which is, if we have a journey that we're intended to fulfill here, or something that we're intended to, our purpose, what is driving us forward or pulling us, then I look at it that way. And I think that, life is always nudging us forward in that direction. And certainly everything that happens for a reason. Like I could have definitely looked at that 6 months of trying to build a network marketing business and just, totally beat it up and said that was horrible. It was nasty, but I didn't. It's like, it was just a stepping stone, which actually led me to meeting Dave Blanchard, which led me to meeting Bob Proctor, which then led to all these other stepping stones, and including the book that I co-authored, Stepping Stones to Success. So, so it starts opening things up. And the way I look at it is, it's about letting go. Because if I think that I can control everything and I can manipulate everything and I can get whatever I want, and, I think that's an earthly perspective. And so, I have a limited amount of control in my perspective. I know that my subconscious mind is keeping me breathing and heart beating and all that. It's doing all these things. So I'm more or less a robot in some respect, or automated in some respect, because otherwise I might kill myself, because if I'm careless, I might stop my heart from beating. So all those things are happening naturally for me. So I have a limited control over what is going on. And so I take that, early time in the morning, those walks in nature, affirmations, all these little increments, because they compound, they add up over time. But there's always blessings coming through. And sometimes we don't think much of them. Like if I have a client says to me, I found a coin the other day, found it 25 cents. I go, celebrate it. I don't think that the universe cares whether it's 25 cents or 25 million or whatever. It's to be celebrated, just appreciate it. It is a gift. It showed up,
Yes.
And I'll share something that's pretty vulnerable, and not many people know this, but I was finding dimes, just dimes. Like I found dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of dimes and lighters, actually, either used or lighters that could be used or whatever. Still, dimes and lighters. Like I collected them. I have like bags of lighters and piles of dimes, and the universe was like sending me this. And I'm like, what is this? Right. So I had to start doing some soul searching, investigating, and I'm not sure whether I got it exactly right, but dimes, the origin of the word dime is to tithe. So I started thinking, well, okay, I guess I should tithe more. I could tithe, mentally, emotionally, monetarily. There's many different ways. Or with the lighters, it was about, being more lighthearted and kind of being a light in the world. And so that's what I gathered from doing my soul searching and realized, okay, I have a purpose here, and I got to shine light on some things and help some people in certain areas, and also have an identity or identities.
Did you happen to have a loved one who smoked and had lighters on them all the time?
Not at all. Okay. No, not even close. It was just, no, I'm talking like I find these things in the most obscure places. Like I might be getting in a car.
The reason why I ask is because I just learned earlier this year, interviewing Karen Noe, the famous medium, that loved ones who pass will sometimes communicate with us, leave us clues that, all is well. Like the loved one, maybe the spouse, the widow or widower, will keep finding feathers everywhere. Just like, here's a feather, I went for a walk, now there's another feather, and there's like, then they start collecting all the feathers because they're just showing up all the time. And that's the loved one putting that little clue in front of you so that you know that they're well and all's good over on the other side of the veil.
My grandmother was a smoker, but I don't know that it possibly could be her, but that's it. But
you could ask.
I don't know if there's any. Yeah, I suppose I could. She smoked and lived like till 94. She was really resilient and strong. But But
speaking of asking, have you ever gotten a clear message from the other side, from a loved one or angel or guide or anything like that? Or God himself?
I don't know if it's anybody specific, but there's times when I got little nudges, and it might not be really much, something that's not super significant. But I remember being in Mauritius, where my wife is from, and I remember swimming in the water, and the wind blew over my what is it called, a snorkel. So it blew over that, and I heard the words "get out." And I was like, what? And then, so I said, okay, well, I'll get out. So I got out of the water, and then within a few moments, rain just, started gushing down. We needed to go and shelter and keep dry or whatever. So, but, there's instances like that, or sometimes I get intuitive nudges. Again, I don't know how significant they are, but, there was one time we were at the airport, we're flying back, and, and I got it. It just hit me. I was like, they're going to give us first class. They're going to move us. And then within moments, they called us and said, would you mind moving first class? We're like, yeah, please. Especially on that 12-hour flight. So there's little things like that. But, and again, I was very intuitive nature. So as a child, my dad was a hunter. Let's kill everything, just about, right? And then there's me, the little bird that lands on the doors. It's about to close and crush its little feet. I pick it up, little baby bird, and take it away. And I had a seagull one time I brought home, and my dad had to tell me, its wing's broken. You're going to have to put it down. I'm like, I don't want to do that, but I did, but Aww. So I always, and I brought dogs home. Dogs followed me home. Cats followed me home. Like I just, but those are the kinds of things that happen. But sometimes I'll get these little nudges or intuitive nudges, or let's say a stone hits my windshield and, chip, nice, spot that you can see. And my reaction is, what did I do for that? How did I cause that? Why do I need that? Like that was, I'm having a dialogue about it instead of saying, oh man, that's going to cost me. It's going to take time and all this. I just like, what does that mean? I start questioning these little incidences because they all have meaning. Like that's, right. I'm thinking that life isn't life isn't just responding to, or isn't happening to me. It's responding. There's constant feedback, yes. and I'm looking for it. Like I'm not like, I'm expecting it. If I see a dead rat, which I did the other day, I question it. I'm like, okay, what's the spiritual meaning of that? Or mice, they were in my backyard climbing all over my barbecue. I question these things and look for little bits of evidence, but I'm also, tuning in more into the spiritual, and because of reading Gary's book, I'm learning about the soul and and things like that, and how we have, as he said, we have like a mothership that's trying to lead us along, and we might be going against it. So I'm looking for evidence that will just keep me moving forward and be more like water. There's a little quote that I picked up from a movie my kids were watching, and it's I'm allowing my emotions to flow like water. So think about that. Allow your emotions to flow like water. Pretty challenging, but if you could, then every incident that would happen, you would say, "Oh, this is interesting." But most times we get triggered and we go right into our reaction.
Yeah, it's good to be an investigator of your triggers so that you can connect those dots and diffuse the triggers. Yeah, ideally not have triggers anymore. I'm curious on the mothership concept from Gary Zukov. He's referring to your higher self, your oversoul, your light avatar. Is that what the mothership refers to?
He explained this way that let's say in a fleet of ships, like back in the olden days, there was always a mothership, like a head ship that's kind of leading the way. And he said that we all have that mothership, that is the leader. That's like, the leader of us. There might be multiple souls like us that are following that mothership. And he says, there are times when you could be going the opposite way and you're going against the current. But if you can tune into what that mothership is calling you to do and step up and be courageous and let go. I mean, I think that's the greatest thing, is letting go, because, we're living in a vacuum. And if we don't let go of something to bring in something new, then we get just caught in the same routine habits and live and die by them.
Right. So one thing I want to circle back on briefly, I know we're running short on time here, but you had mentioned, finding 25 cents or the quarters on the road versus, whether it might be $25 million, it's still important. And it reminded me of a Kabbalah teaching that disrespecting the penny that you find in stepping on it, or tossing it aside. If you get the penny jar at the gas station, you get some change and it's a penny. Like, I don't want that, and you throw it into the jar because you don't want it. That disrespect of the energy has implications. It has effects, and it's not great. And it's not like you're disrespecting just a penny. You're disrespecting the energy of prosperity, of what the money represents. It's just the size of the vessel is different in a penny versus $1 million. So that's something that occurred to me while you were talking about the 25 cents and the dimes and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great analogy that I use, which is, let's say if I had in one hand, I had this coin, shiny coin, and then in the other hand, I have $10,000. And I say, okay, you want the $10,000 or you want the shiny coin? People always say, well, give me the $10,000. And then I say, here, great, fantastic, have it. By the way, this is from a scallion, and it's 300 years old, and it's worth $25 million. You just said no to $25 million because of relevance or perception, right? I mean, actually, I'll just mention something. We have 6 mental faculties: perception, will, imagination, memory, intuition, and reason. That's something Bob Proctor taught me, and never forget it. We have those powers, and if we just take a different perspective on things, we can shift a lot of things and enjoy this life, have a life worth living.
What a great way to end this episode. Thank you so much. And Dan, if our listener or viewer wants to work with you, get some coaching from you, or just follow you and get some insights that way, what would be the best way for them to get in touch?
Well, I think the greatest gift I could give is this tool that I have, and it is a planning system, but it helps you balance your business and your health and well-being and your relationships. And so I call it the 12-week focused productivity planner. And it helps you get your career and your health, well-being, and relationships in tune, not necessarily perfectly balanced, but in a position so that you can say, that was a good day. I felt good. I did some good things today. And it doesn't matter whether, it was a perfect day, but at least, you're taking care of those areas, because if your health goes down, everything else fails, right? If your relationships go, your health is probably going to follow, and then business or career will follow, go down as well. So, but anyway, yeah, that's I've given, I have it at danlefave.com/free focus, and anybody can grab that and use it. It's a neat little tool. There's a video that shows you how to use it. So,
awesome. And I'll include that link in the show notes too. If you're driving or you're lifting weights right now, you can go check out the show notes later. Awesome. And then your main website, and if you want to share your favorite social channel and what your handle or username is, that would be great too.
Sure. My website is LeFaveCoaching.com. And the website, or the social network I'm on predominantly, is LinkedIn, and you can find me there. You can just search for Dan LeFave, and you'll find me there. And I post regularly, and I post value. I'm not somebody posting quotes and stuff, even though I have them. but yeah, I'm posting value and challenging deep questions that are testing the limits of our potential.
Awesome. So, thank you, Dan. And thank you, listener. And we'll catch you on the next episode. In the meantime, make it a great day for not just you, but everyone around you. This is your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.